All right, it's COMP3026, web application or application security programming, and we're going to be covering TypeScript today. So let's talk about what that is and how you do it. So first of all, the place to go for all things TypeScript is TypeScriptLang.org, right? That's the place we first go. And TypeScriptLang.org, for those people who've done courses with me on TypeScript before, this should be no news for you. You should have seen this. There's a couple of ways to install TypeScript if you're using the command line. If you're using things like the mean stack, then you're doing things with npm install -g global TypeScript, and now you have access to the command that's tsc, and you're going to concentrate on or target the hello world or whatever the name of the file is .ts. TS is the TypeScript extension, and then it'll convert it to pure JavaScript. Right? That's just very, very simple. There's all kinds of other switches and everything else that are in there that you can use as well at a very high level. So what the hell is TypeScript anyway? If I go to learn, there's a tutorial on TypeScript right online, and it kind of tells you on how to use everything from command line and so on. But the better one to go to is where it says play. If I go to play, it actually shows us kind of an online little example. So here's a class that I put together, and it remembered it. Class player, right? And here I've kind of established a strength value that's a number, and here's my constructor. And example, I can access my local variable or my instance variable strength by using the this keyword, right? This is the TypeScript side. So it's natural language. It looks like something we know already. A class with a constructor, and this would be your method. So let's do some annotation here. Online. You can do the same thing with me. If you go on to this learn, it'll be something else for you. It'll be a greeter class that you see, right? So for me, it's player. So type what I've got. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of say these are my instance variables. That's what these are up here, right? And down in here is going to be my constructor. So this is my constructor. All right. So let's put that in there. And then here is these are my public. These are my public methods, as an example. Here's my public method. Okay, so public method. And right now, I don't have any access modifiers on them. Right now, if you notice, it's strength, which is it's a property or an instance variable in this case. That's a number of type number. I can also say, well, if I want it accessible outside of my class, I can add the public keyword right in there. And the same thing goes with my public method, right? Now, once I've done this, here's my main function. My main function is, Tom is a new player, and then Tom fights, just like we would normally see in like a C# language, right? Once you see the changes here, right? This is the you want to convert it to this side. This is the converted version of the TypeScript. This is the JavaScript, and if you notice, there is no strength declaration here because from a JavaScript perspective, we don't need to declare our variable before we use it, right? On the JavaScript side, on the TypeScript side, right? The reason why we have TypeScript at all when we use between JavaScript and TypeScript is to add tooling to our when we do our programming in JavaScript. All right, so very simple, high-level example. If you notice, it actually does a self-executing anonymous inner closure, right? So you've got your player, which is the alias, and this is the JavaScript side. You've got your anonymous function right here, and then inside your function you have another function. This is the closure, right? That shows you the function. This would be the equivalent of the constructor, and see how it annotates things correctly. And here we use the .prototype form to indicate that fights is a method that belongs to the player class, right? So this is on the JavaScript side, and if you notice, it can be quite messy, and for some people, you don't know what all this little syntax means, right? For example, how you're creating this anonymous closure, all right? Anonymous self-executing closure, actually. And the self-executing part is right here, right? Because you're mentioning it like it's its own, it's almost like its own method that's firing when you're calling itself, if you will. One thing that's missing from here is the outline brackets. Like usually what you have is from this piece down to here is the entire closure. And here, all you're doing is you're creating your alias. So this is the kind of stuff that TypeScript will kick out when it cross-compiles or trans-compiles, right? So why is this good? Why am I even talking about this? Why TypeScript? Why not just use JavaScript from the get-go? It provides a very solid code base that's very human readable and allows us to do code hinting. That you don't get the same level of code hinting with JavaScript at all. Let's take a look at an example. So here I am in Visual Studio, and I want to start off a new project, right? And I'm going to start off on ASP.NET web application, but we're going to just call this our COMP3026 TypeScript demo. Yeah. And we're going to press OK. We're going to make it an empty application, so nothing's going to be inside of it. And we're not going to include any additional information here. We're not going to host it in the cloud for now. We're just going to press OK. All right, so our solution right now is empty. Right? There's nothing in there at all. So in order for us to set up a brand new solution, we're going to make a web app, right? And we're going to use TypeScript for all the interactivity, right? So in order for us to do this, to help us, we're going to download our favorite little framework, CreateJS, right? So we're going to do something in the canvas. I'm going to give you the commands to do it all, right? And I want you to see how beautiful it is. We're going to make a button class that we're going to use in TypeScript. We're going to make an interactive button. When you click the button, it's going to make some noise, right? And it's going to be all with JavaScript. There's not going to be hardly any HTML or CSS whatsoever. Okay, let's try this out. So we're going to right-click, and we're going to add a new index.html page. Okay, we're going to call this index. And just to keep HTML5 compliant, again, what I'm going to do is type in lang is equal to English. And in the head of the document, we're going to put our meta tag in like we normally do. So our meta tag character set is equal to UTF-8. Oops, UTF-8, right? And then from there, we're probably going to add another meta tag, again, just from a compliance perspective, where name is equal to viewport and content is equal to width is equal to device width initial scale 1. Okay, these are all things that come up like we normally do, right? And we're going to call this, just for Jean-Luc, the button example, right? Right there it is, the button example. Okay, we need a couple of classes here and a couple of libraries for this to get going, right? One of them is I want to download and install the CreateJS library, right? So because we want to actually use Canvas and all that stuff, right? And we also need a canvas tag. So let's create a canvas tag that's in the document. So we'll say canvas. And we're going to name this canvas. The ID of the canvas is going to be called canvas. And let's make it a width of 640 with a height of 480. Now you can set these values up in CSS as well if you like. But for me, I'm going to make it like this. Okay, so that's one thing. So this is our container. This is what's going to contain our game or our product, if you will, application, right? So in here, what we want to do now is I want to include I want to grab some libraries for this to work. I'm not going to use jQuery. I'll tell you right now. There's no jQuery involved whatsoever. It's going to be pure JavaScript. Okay, so let's get this stuff. So I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to go to Manage NuGet Packages, right? And in NuGet, I want to grab easel.js, right? So this is the first piece. And easel.js, again, if I was to grab this thing, if you notice it says fun script, TypeScript, binding easel.js. If I look for CreateJS, here's CreateJS, that library, and if this will give me the binding for CreateJS. It doesn't give me the actual library though, so I need to get that from somewhere. So this is great from a type definition library, and we'll talk about that afterwards. But I need to get this stuff. One thing I want to do in preparation is go add and go into new folder, scripts. Let's set some of this stuff up right away. So this is where my script is going to live. And one of the scripts I want to make work is going to be my app.js script. But it's not going to be called app.js. We're going to make it an app.ts file. So we're going to say add TypeScript. And we're going to call this app. It's going to ask me, do I want to add TypeScript definitions? For now, let's leave it as no. All right? Are you with me?
Sorry.
This is a to-do thing. This is not a to-watch thing. Yeah.
Sorry, you said no to add the...
Not type definition libraries right now. We'll add it later.
If we're going to look in TypeScript, let's leave it to not have it.
No, we're going to add them. We need them.
Okay.
We're just not going to add them right now because we don't have any JavaScript yet.
Okay.
Right?
So you can add the package.
I went to NuGet just to show you that they're up there. I was looking for if they've added them. They haven't added them yet. So let's just add the libraries manually. So I'm going to go to the Create.js website. And again, it's just any package. You can download and install. If you like Node.js, get Node.js. Try it with some other package. For me, this is just the easiest one to get, right? Just to demonstrate it. Remember, this is a demo. So I'm going to go to download my easel.js. And if you notice, there's a bunch of downloads. You can also use the CDN if you really want to. I'm going to just download the actual file. So here's my easel.js. I'm going to download easel.js. I'm going to download, I don't think I need tween, but you know what, just for the sake of what we're doing, I'll download them all. There they are. I'll let them do their thing and resolve. When I bring them up in my downloads, here's my easel.js. I'm just going to, that's not what I want to do. I'm just going to, kind of extract this one. Okay, so easel.js, again, it's just a multimedia library. Again, you can use it for different things. You can use it for app development as well. All right, there's another one. I'll extract them all, step by step. And we don't need all of it because it comes with examples and other stuff we don't need for today. But what we want to use is the JavaScript libraries that we want to include. And again, some random library. Think of it this way. Okay, so now I've got they're all extracted. I'm going to go down to the first one is easel. I'm going to put them in a specific order to make things work properly. Right? So I'm just going to minimize this thing. And here's my script file. And I'm going to drag and drop them into here, from in here. So in my easel.js, I'm going to go into here and into my, I believe it's my, no, not source. It might be my lib file. There it is, my lib file. I'm going to drag and drop my easel.js.min.js, this one. 0.8.1. I'm going to drag that into my scripts. That's my first script. Are you with me? Okay, so let's try the next ones. Otherwise, if you just watch me, you're not going to get anything done. I guarantee you. You will not learn unless you do on this one because there's a lot to do. Okay, so lib. I'm going to drag in my tween.js. Tween.js actually does in-betweens. It's a good little tool for animation. We're probably not going to use it, but we're just going to include it as part of the library. And then we're going to have our sound.js. Our sound.js actually controls sounds. And in here, we're going to add in sound.js.min.js in here as well. There we are. And one last one that we need to use is our preload.js, where you can preload images and sounds. So our preload module, if you will. We may not get to that today, and that's okay. But I wanted to show you what it looks like to kind of put the library together. Okay, so there we go. We have some scripts. Are you with me? Scripts, JavaScripts. And there's a bunch of libraries here that we have to use. Now we want to consume this stuff, right? We have our app.ts, and we want to make sure that our app.ts can have access to these libraries and have tooling. So we want them to have code hinting and everything else for some random libraries we just got. By the way, you can make your own type definition library, which is what we may have to do here to make all this work. Okay, so we got our scripts. Now we're going to go to NuGet. And I'm going to go to Manage NuGet Packages. And I'm going to go in there and type easel.js, right? And for easel.js and for a lot of other libraries out there, they have this something called the type definition library. And all that a type definition library is think about it as an abstract definition of what's in the class. So if I have a method in the class, it's a definition of what's in the class without the method body, almost like an abstract class. That's what it is. So you define what you're expecting, like all the inputs, the arguments for the class, and so on. That's really what a type definition file is. And that's what we're getting here. So I'm going to install. It's kind of like that, but it tells you what you're expecting, so it gives you good code hinting for your library. So there's two pieces. One is you have to have a TypeScript installed, and the next piece is you have to get these type definition files. And there's quite a few of them for this one class, for this one thing that I'm looking for. Let's take a look and see what's happened. So in my scripts, I have something called typings, right? And typings give you not only, and if you notice, I've got a bunch of different things here, easel and tween. It didn't grab sound because I didn't ask for sound. But under my easel.js, I have something called easel.js.d.ts. And if I was actually to look at this to see what it looks like this. It looks to me like almost like a declaration for what the classes would look like without actually doing anything. It just tells you, hey, this is what's inside of my module. This is what these things I'm expecting are. This is what letter spacing, whatever letter spacing is for bitmap text. It's a number, right? Remember in JavaScript, you have everything in JavaScript is loosely typed. So there isn't any, you don't have to declare the type of variable. Here in TypeScript, right, the right thing to do is to declare the variable. The great thing is you could do both. You could be as loosely typed or as strict as you want. You can use part of TypeScript or none of TypeScript. You can mix and match to give you all the functionality that you need. That's the great thing. And what type definition libraries allow us to do is get code hinting so that it doesn't give us errors in our TypeScript file. So let's take a look at this, what I mean by this. So here I am in app.ts. I haven't defined stuff for sound or tween yet, and I'm only going to add them when I need them. All right. For now, I don't need sound because I don't have a button. I don't have anything. Right? In my class, I have to do a little bit of preparation. One of the things I'd like to do is set up a reference to the canvas element. So here's a reference to the canvas element. That's the first thing I want to do. Right now, I have access to my canvas element or anything else right now, and I don't have access to my libraries, or I do have access, but I don't have any code hinting until I drop in these typings. So the one thing I want to do is put in a typing from my easel.js.d.ts. That's one thing I want to kind of put in there. I want to have that in there. I definitely want to have access to my tween.js as well if I want to do any animation. So I want to put that in there as well. So I need these typings, almost like references to my object. So I've done that pre-work. Yeah.
Does the triple slash mean anything?
Triple slash is a reference. That's what it does in Visual Studio. Only Visual Studio. It actually works out differently in other languages, right? In other IDEs. Okay, let's go to index.html. Now I haven't included my TypeScript or my JavaScript classes here at all, and I need to do that. So down underneath the canvas element, where we're going to put all of our JavaScript, we're going to put our JavaScript library here. So here's our JavaScript section, right? And inside here, we want to drag and drop all these little libraries here. So one of them is easel.js, in this order, please. Easel.js, then tween.js, then sound.js, and then we're going to preload everything afterwards. Okay, and then finally, we have to have access to our file, which is our app.ts file. And if you notice, when I drag and drop my app.ts file, it converts it to the JS version, right? So the TS gets the ending is converted to JS. There is no JS right now because we haven't saved anything. The other thing is we need to access, kick off this function somehow, right? And there's a bunch of ways to do this. The cheesiest and easiest way to do it, I'll put it that way, when I go back into my app.ts file, right, is to create some kind of function that's going to kick off first, like an init function. So let's do that in prep. So I'm going to say function init, and then in my init function, I'm going to do my initialization. For now, let's just see that it works. We're just going to do a console.log that's going to say, started. Right? Okay, nice and easy. Right now, we haven't done any TypeScript or JavaScript. It's just very, very basic level start. In my index.html now, I can say on load, when my content of the body loads, then access my init function. Right? So that's how it's going to tie in or connect my function to my index.html. Now I've loaded all these libraries. Yeah.
1 second. So the definition files, did you download those from?
NuGet. The actual libraries I downloaded from online, like we just did, right? The actual libraries.
Just using the CDNs.
You can do that too. You can do it too. The only thing with the CDNs are sometimes you won't get good tooling unless you drag and drop that's why the type definition libraries are really important. If you drag and drop the type definition libraries across, you're not going to have a problem with tooling, right? Yes?
So in app.ts, you have those references at the top there. How did you quickly
Drag and drop. Drag and drop the typings, right?
Okay.
Any typings you want, you drag and drop into app.ts. One thing I missed was create.js. This is also a create.js typing as well. I'll just grab this and pull it across as well. Yeah.
In general, do you see TypeScript being succeeded by something else, or is this going to be?
Why don't you watch and see?
Okay.
Right, it's too early to tell right now. All right, so I've done this. I've got my JavaScript function. Let's test it to see if it works. I'm going to run this thing in Chrome, and we're going to get a blank screen, right? Because there's nothing there right now. It just says button example. And let's go to the hamburger, and go to More Tools, and go to JavaScript Console. Right, now don't worry about the 404 for a second, and just refresh. We see that started is there, which means that we've accessed that init function that's inside of our JavaScript library that's outside of our index.html. Yes?
I just noticed a reference with .ts. For debugging,
It'll give you
Visual Studio,
the .ts as well.
But I'm asking, is Visual Studio hooking that up then, or
Yeah.
why is it still showing the TS?
Yeah, it's actually running it so that way when it connects, and also the latest version of Chrome can identify which file it's in. Before it was going back to the JS file, right? Nowadays, and it was more difficult from a debugging perspective. Now, if I just click right on here, it'll take me right to the example. Look, right in there, right into the app.ts file. It's not Visual Studio, it's Chrome. Chrome has gotten more advanced, right? So, because remember, Google's going to be in bed with Microsoft soon. Yeah.
Actually, it's the map files that's doing that.
The map file as well, but there are no map files right now. It generates the map file for you. The JavaScript file, it generates the JavaScript file. Visual Studio does that in the background for you. Like right now, for example, if I go to stop debugging, and if you look at all files, what I got here is an app.js and an app.js map file. That map file is the one that's kind of pointing to where the hell my error is. Right?
When TypeScript transcode or whatever, that's
Yeah.
generated also.
If I look at the app.js file, if I want to see this app.js file, if I double click on it, it'll actually show me exactly what I had on the other side. This is the pure JS version of my app.ts version. It's transcompiled everything on save. So as soon as I save my file, it transcompiles. There's nothing to transcompile. It's exactly the same right now. All right, let's get back to this. So if we know this works now, I can start calling upon these libraries. And this is the beauty of this stuff. So first, I'm going to set up a reference to my canvas element. Right? So I'm going to say var canvas is equal to document.getElementById. It's pure JavaScript, right? Canvas. So I made a reference to my canvas element this way. That's the canvas element that's on the page that's sitting right here. Right? This one right here. And just to see it, let's add in a CSS file that kind of gives a border, puts a border around the canvas. And let's put the canvas itself in the middle of our screen. A little bit of CSS practice for you. Huh? So I'm going to right-click on my project. I'm going to go to Add. I'm going to go to Add New Folder. I'm going to add in a folder called Contents. And in my Content folder, I'm going to right-click. I'm going to add a new object that's going to be a style sheet. We're going to call this app. We're going to get app.css, right? Our app.css is going to have a body that we don't care about right now. All we care about is saying any canvas element in our object right now, any canvas element is going to have a border, right, of 1 pixel, let's say solid black. Right? There we go. That's our canvas element, have 1 pixel solid black. And when I run this thing again, you're going to see our canvas element highlighted, right? If all goes well. And sometimes you need to, oh yeah, it'd be nice if I tied my CSS into my code, huh? How about that? How about them apples?
Might help.
Might help. So I'm just going to put this app.css underneath my title. And I'm going to put a new section in here that says CSS section, right? Just that way we can set, if we have more CSS in there. And now when we run it, it does one of these, right? This is what our canvas would look like. You can actually see the canvas defined. The canvas is empty, right? There's nothing on the canvas at all right now. There is no background. There is no color to the canvas. It just looks like a big block, right? So this is where we're going to draw. We're going to draw our button over here somewhere. And we're going to have to make a button class to do so. All right, so let's do that. So first, we've got access to the canvas. It printed it out. And then the next thing is we want to go into our app.ts file. And in our app.ts file, we want to change this now to create a stage. Here's where the TypeScript comes in. All right, so I'm going to say var stage is equal to, here's the colon, right? Create.js dot stage, right? See the code hinting? It's coming up because I've connected it with my pathing up here, right? This pathing gives us the type definition for our create.js library. Normally, if you have a new library, it won't give you any kind of typing whatsoever, no code hinting at all, especially for things like Node and other things. It just won't do it. But here with TypeScript, what it does is it gives us that code hint, that tooling. So I've created a reference. This is a reference to our stage. The stage is our canvas in some ways. It's almost like a layer on the canvas we can draw on. Again, we're using HTML5 canvas to do this. So reference to stage. That's all it is. We haven't created a stage yet. And this is a reference to the canvas element. Okay, that's what this is. Okay, the next piece. Let's actually create the stage, right? So we're going to say var, or sorry, stage is equal to new createjs.stage, and we're going to pass in the canvas element, right? So all we're doing is we're taking that canvas element and we're binding it to this new createjs stage that we're doing. So this is where we're going to be able to tell it where it's going to draw stuff. Okay, for any games or any kind of interactivity where something changes on this in the canvas, we need to have some kind of game loop equivalent, right? Sometimes people call it some kind of callback function, almost like that takes care of our ticker, if you will, right? So we need to create that. And the way to do that, of course, is to go createjs dot, and again, if I go ticker, and I go dot set FPS to, we're going to set it to 60 frames per second. All right, so we're going to set the ticker to 60 frames per second. Okay, so 60 frames per second means 60 ticks in every second. Every second we're going to have a frame. Our stage will be refreshed 60 times every second, over and over again, right? Okay, now we have, of course, when it's updated, so we're going to say createjs dot ticker dot on, and on is like an event listener. You can also say, instead of on, you can say add event listener, but that's the old way of doing it. The new way of doing it is saying on tick. So every tick, we're going to access our game loop. We're going to call a new function, new callback function, game loop for now. Here's our game loop. We don't have that right now, but we will. And it's going to give us a little error, right, saying, hey, and this is createjs again and TypeScript. It's saying there is no game loop, Tom. What are you talking about, right? Because we're using TypeScript, it's giving us code hinting. All right, let's go back and create this new function. So we're going to say function game loop. And this game loop is it's an event type function, right? So I could literally define an event that's of type createjs.event, right? And by the way, one thing we also can do with functions is declare whether there's any kind of output. For example, for these functions, there is no output. The function is returning void.
So, supposed to use the colon,
Where?
See, when you
Here?
declared state of it, you use the colon.
When I use the colon, that's a good question. I'm showing you the code first. That's good questions. The colon says, now, anything that comes after the colon is my declaration for the type that's of the variable that I'm declaring. Yes?
Everything is equivalent of int cat. And
It's
just saying declaring a variable.
declaring a variable.
Cat, the type int.
My type is, my data type is, so anything after colon, anything after the colon is, my data type is this. This is the data type, or the reference to the data type for this particular variable. All right, that's all it is. It's just like saying in C#, it's like saying string and then the name of the variable. In this particular case, it's saying, make a reference to the variable. Yeah, the reference to the data type. Yes.
I'm guessing you would also be able to do a equal sign afterwards.
Yes.
So stage
If you wanted to.
Colon equals. You mean?
No.
Or
stage,
after the
colon,
equate, yes, of
yeah.
course, on the same one. You can. I'm splitting it up because I'm in this particular reference, in this particular context, because because canvas and stage are outside of my functions. They're on the global scope. Yeah.
I was going to ask about that because they're on the global scope. Should we not class this
Not yet.
and encapsulate it?
Not yet. One step at a time. Walk before we run, because you won't understand. You won't
Let's
see
get the
it.
ball going faster.
I'm trying. I can't get the ball rolling faster until you see stuff, right? Right. So let's get the game loop going. In the game loop, what I want to do is do one of these: stage stage.update. And so basically what I'm saying is the update method of the stage that's built in create.js, it'll refresh the screen. That's all it does. So it clears the screen and redraws everything to the stage. And if you notice anything, if you know anything about Canvas, HTML5 Canvas, without create.js or another library like that, you got to do all the refreshing and the redrawing on your own. Okay, it's not like you can do it simply like this. The update method takes care of all that. Okay, that's one. So we do this, the game loop. That's what we're doing here. But we also want to do something else. I want to have my main app, or whatever you want to call it, function. Let's just call this function main that I'm going to access. I don't have that function yet, but I will. And this function main is going to be here, down here. Okay, this function main is going to be called, again, after, only after I've generated this. I've got an access to the stage, and when my stage is here, is when it's being drawn, right, as an example. After this is done, after I've set my ticker to 60 frames per second and everything else, then I'm going to call my main function. This happens in order, right? Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to create a, yes?
Just one very quick question. I'm assuming that as far as standards go, people want you to either be strictly typed or not strictly typed, not mixing, right?
Typically, yes. You don't want to do both.
Say, like one thing would be like, say, so you've got 3 functions right now, only one of them is declared as a void, and the 2 are unknown. So I think like, best standards, they would want that.
Everything the same. Yeah, you should put everything the same. You don't need to.
Get in the habit of you don't have to do it.
No.
If you're going to follow that path, then
correct. You should do it. So now what we want to do is, if I want to have a, which one?
Canvas at the top there.
This is the problem. What do you type canvas as? An HTML element,
yeah, no,
right?
looking at that.
So how do you do it? So if I go HTML, can I do this? HTML element is what the best it can be. That's the best that Canvas will be for you. An HTML element, if you want to type it, right? Because that's the type. Canvas is actually an element, right? So all you're saying is this is the type it is. And once you do that, if I was to do something like this with Canvas, now that I know, without creating a canvas yet, now that I know that it's an HTML element, I can do something like this, canvas dot, and it'll give me all kinds of properties for it. That's why you should be, like you said, adding in the type for what Canvas is. Otherwise, you won't get that type definition. You won't get that typing at all, right? Okay, so we don't need to do that right now because we're not accessing Canvas in any way. But that's okay, that works. Let us go in here and in our main function, now we're going to do a couple things. We're going to create a button, but we're not going to use a class first, and then we're going to apply the class definition after, right? So how do we do a button? Well, first, let's do a label. Let's do a hello world, because if we don't do hello world, then it's just bad luck, right? So we need to do that, right? I know you're saying no. We'll do this. We'll say var. We'll say my hello label, right, is equal to a new create.js.text, right? And inside there, it takes, if you notice the code hinting that I'm getting again, it tells me the type that I need, and I need some font, and the question mark says optional font, optional color. That's what the question mark says. We have optionals in TypeScript as well, where you can define them or not. Okay, so let's say we're going to say hello world. World. And then in our font, we're going to have the type. So we're going to say 40 pixels, maybe 80 pixels. 80 pixels, Consolus, let's say, some weird font, with a color of FF00 yellow. All right, so that's what we're going to do there. So we've got an idea of what this thing is. The create.js text object, I've just created a new object called hello label, right? So hello label now has all the properties of my create.js text. However, if you want to see the code hinting, just like you guys are saying, I should have done this as well. Right? If I don't do this, I'm not going to see the code hinting on the following line. Okay, so let's just take a look at that. So here I create a reference. I declare the variable as a type, and I create a reference to the type. Here I've actually used a new keyword with constructor notation to create my new object. Okay, now on the next line, I need to add this to the stage. So I'm going to say stage dot add child, right? Hello label. Now remember, from a staging perspective, Canvas works like this. The top left corner of the canvas is 0, 0, right? That's from a coordinate system perspective. As you go to the right, x coordinate goes to the right, you add. As you go down, you add y coordinates, right? So in order for me to be in the middle of the stage, knowing that the stage is 640 by 480, I want to be able to take it to the middle. However, here's the problem. My hello label is also the registration mark or focal point of the hello label object is on the top left corner of it, right? So if I want that registration mark to be in the middle, I've got to use another function to get the measured width. But for now, let's just put it on the stage and see what happens. So you see I'm not lying to you. If I've done everything correctly, I should see a hello world and nice big yellow colors. And quite ugly as well.
Yeah, I wasn't even saying anything.
Yeah.
When I go to build it, like through all my definitions have errors, like missing semicolons. Do you have any idea what's going on?
What version of Visual Studio do you have?
I don't know, just not 2013.
Did you update? Do you have update 4? Did you download TypeScript? Right. So if you don't have that, if you're getting errors and stuff like that, it's because you don't have TypeScript 1.4 or higher, right? That's one reason why that won't work. And you can go to TypeScript and download the latest version. If you go to typescriptlang.org and if you download TypeScript, it'll be 1.5 and that'll take care of your errors. But you'd have to restart Visual Studio. Okay. So you've got this going on. I've got my hello world. It's pretty ugly. Let's change the font style or the font color. Instead of my FFFFF0, let's make it 000, let's make it black. So now you see that I can add as many colors as I want, whatever I can do. And there's lots of filtering and everything else you can do here. This is beyond the scope of what we're trying to accomplish today. So, okay, so here's my hello label, but I want it to be in the middle, right? So one thing I need to do before I put it on the stage is change the registration point. So I'm going to say hello label.regex, right, is equal to hello label.getMeasured. These are just functions that come with it. Get measured width, right, times 0.5. Right, so half of the measured width is going to be the middle of my first registration mark, which is going to be the focal point of the top, right? I'm going to do the next one, hello label.reg_y, my y point, right? I'm just centering the registration in the middle of the label now. That's all I'm doing here. And then hello label.getMeasured height, right? And then multiply that by 0.5. You can also say divide by 2, but you know what? Division, again, for the most part, when you play games, is a negative. You don't want to try and do that. You want to multiply rather than divide. Even now. Optimization. Right. Okay, so you've got those two things. Then you want to place it in the middle. So you can always do something like this. Hello.x, right? Hello label.x is equal to, again, now you've got in the middle of the point. You can just say 320, right? And hello label.y at the same time is equal to 240, right?
Can you do the same thing as far as getting the measured width and height of things?
You can.
Because ideally you should have a project.
Ideally, you shouldn't even do that. Ideally, you should have a config file that you have all the you should all the defaults in there. So if you know if you're gonna make your game or application for a certain size, you have all those default widths in a config file, and all you do is call the config file with no calculations.
But I'm thinking, let's say you make a game where you want to gear to full screen. You don't have control of.
Yeah, you can. All you do is you detect what size the canvas is, and then when you do that, you rejig the game so that it uses another set of default values, as opposed to recalculation. Recalculation is a negative. Because then what happens?
You'd have
breakpoints.
Values.
Yeah, you'd have breakpoints. So basically, you do when it's this big, then you use these default values.
Okay.
So the screens change size exactly, not stretches and fits, because sometimes that's wrong.
It would get custom.
Well, you just have to rejig everything, all your stuff. Okay, so this is what we got here, and this is my hello label, and this is nice. This is nice. I can make my hello label appear where I want. It's going to be black now if I refresh, and it's going to put it in the middle of my screen, the dead middle of my screen, right? You'd think. But now if you notice a little bit down, and the reason for that is because get measured width and get measured height from a text perspective does things a little bit differently. It's kind of a little bit lower than I'd like it to be. To fix this, right, instead of get measured width and get measured height, you can also use get bounds. That's another function that you can use. And you wouldn't just use get bounds. You'd have to use get bounds dot width, the width property, and the get bounds dot height property. Let me show you the difference between that. Now, get bounds works also with bitmap objects.
What is bounds return?
There's two. Bounds is actually, yeah, it's a height and width property. It gives you both properties when you call bounds. Okay, but it has to, in order for bounds to work, this object has to be created already. All right, so let's try this out. That's why you try not to use that. So let's go refresh, and let's see the difference. So you see nothing, no difference. It's still around the same area. And there's reasons for this, because it's trying to measure the height and width of your object as best as possible, and it's a text object. So you get extra spacing, and you know, remember, you're getting some stuff from it's converting an actual text object, right, into a bitmap and printing it out, right? So it's slightly different there. Okay, so that's the first piece. I want to do another label. Here's where the class example comes in. Or maybe I want to rotate this label around. I want to make it spin, right? Well, I can't do it right now because guess what? Hello label is a local variable that exists only in the main function, right? So if I want to access my hello label, I got to make it available on the global scope at this particular context. In the future, like John Luke said, we want to kind of move this off so it's its own class. So there's no global scope, right? All right. So for now, let's create this, and we're going to say here is where we're going to create our game variables, right? And inside here, we're going to make it a new hello label like we did before, right? With a reference to the create.js text object, right? So that we know what it is.
.text and .bitmap text.
There is no bitmap text.
Well,
There's
the
bitmap.
.js that had a reference to it.
It's not the same. You'll see. It's not. It doesn't work properly. But let me go back. Just bear with me for a second. Okay, bitmap there is. I don't think there's bitmap text yet. They're working on it. Okay, let's go back to this. I can take this away now, right? Because this whole thing is this piece here has already been defined, so I just have to do one of these. So hello label. I don't have to do this. I'm not really redefining it. I can take away the reference to the object and go back to here like this. So now, because it's been defined in the global scope, I've defined it up here. I can use it inside my game loop. So what I'm going to do is I can update my hello label, right? I'm in my game loop. What I want to do is this. I want to say hello label dot rotation plus equals to 3, which is going to rotate the label on its center point 3 degrees every frame, which is pretty quick. Let's try this out. So refresh, and there we go. There's our rotation. So we can rotate the label as we want, right? Now you'd think this is nice and easy, right? But what if I have more than one label? Now we have the use case for a class, right? If we only did this one time, it wouldn't be a big deal. But if we're doing it multiple times, it doesn't make sense for me to copy this whole thing over and over again. So let's make a label class. That's the first thing. And let's attach it as a separate module. This is where the fun starts. For some of you, may be like, okay, Tom, you haven't showed us anything new. Huh?
We're not having fun already.
You're not having fun already, right? So there's a couple things we have to consider, right? We're going to stop debugging. And in here, I need to organize my files a little bit. And this is one part of it. Whether you're programming in AngularJS and Node, or whether you're doing it in, if you're using ASP.NET and MVC5, whatever you're doing, organization to me is really, really important. So I'm going to right-click on my project, and I'm going to add a new folder that I'm going to call objects. Now you can call this folder whatever you want, but I'm creating a new namespace. So let's go into my objects folder, and in my objects folder I'm going to add a new TypeScript file. And I'm going to call this thing label. Right? So here's my label class, is my new TS file. Inside of here I'm going to use the new, I'm going to create a new module with the module keyword. And I'm going to name this module objects. Right? Inside my objects module, I'm going to create a code block. Inside my objects module, I want to export. You have to use this export class. A new class, right? That I'm going to call label, capital L. Right? I don't have this class; it doesn't exist. But I'm going to extend. This is where we're going to go. We're going to speed up a little bit. We're going to extend the create.js text class, right? Okay, what does this do? It actually creates a reference to the create.js text class. So now my label is it's in an is-a relationship. It is a text object, right? Now when I do this, I also need a couple things when I create my class. First of all, let's do a little bit of commenting. So we'll say here's my label class, just because we want to separate this later on so we can see this. And in my label class, we have a constructor object. And when I create my constructor object, it's going to error out. And the reason why is because it needs to send, it needs to call upon the superclass and send the information that it needs to the superclass, right? So I need a reference to the superclass object, and the superclass is like me using the words new, whatever the class is. So instead of saying new, I'm just going to say super, and in there it's going to request the same stuff that I sent to it before. So I need some kind of label string, which I don't have yet, and I need some kind of font, label font, right? And I also need some kind of label color, right? I don't have that yet, but I will, right? And I'm going to send this off into my superclass. I'm going to request this when I load up my constructor. I'm going to create a label string of type string. I'm going to ask for a label font of type string. And I'm going to ask for a label color of type string. And you know what? I might as well ask for my x and y coordinates. Okay, so that's my constructor. My constructor requests all these things, these parameters, when I create my object called label. All right, so now this is what I'm requesting. Here's where it can get fun, right? I'm going to go back to my app.ts file, and I'm going to grab this example. I don't need this anymore because really I've done this already, right? Up until now. I need this part though, right? I need this stuff. So this and this is what I'm going to be doing now. But this part here, specifically my hello label.getBounds width and height, right? That's the kind of stuff that I want to do here in my class label, as opposed to doing it out there every single time. This is going to save me a lot of typing, right? So what I want to do is, before my constructor definition, I want to kind of create my properties, if you will. Now these are, you can make them public properties or private properties. Let's use my public properties first. So I need a couple of things. I want to declare a width and a height. So here's my width. If you notice, I'm not using the var keyword. Width is a number, right? And height is also a number. I don't have those properties yet, and they're going to be public, to use the best practices that Mr. Stephen is telling me about. Public, right? Of course, my constructor by default is public, right? Can't be private because that would make it so that the constructor notation wouldn't function. So we need to have that in there. Okay, good. So now that I have my public width and height, I need to assign those values in my constructor. Or I could in my constructor. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say this.width then is equal to this.getBounds. Now you might say this is crazy. It might work, it might not. You might say this won't work at all, right? If I go getBounds.width, right, multiplied, just by itself, and this.height then is equal to this.getBounds.height. So I'm defining my height and width variables that are public properties that I can access outside of my class. Now I'm going to go my regx and regy values. So this.regx, I still have access to those, is equal to this.width, right, multiplied by 0.5, and this.regi then, and you can see the code hinting helping me out here, height 0.5. Okay, so I've got those two things. I also need to set the x and y coordinates. So this.x is equal to x, and this.y is equal to y, right? Because I can get those values right from the constructor notation that I'm getting right here. Okay, so this is how this works. Width, height, regx, reg-y values. And you know what? I don't have an update function that's required. I just have this. If I go back to my app.ts file, right, I've pretty much done everything I need to do, but I haven't connected my label ts, this new object, into my code yet. There's a few steps to put together in order for it to be accessible, and here they are. First, I need to go to my Solution Explorer, right? Even though I've created the file, I need to link it now, right? So here's my label.ts file. I'm going to go back into my index.html. After my JavaScript section, I'm going to create, here's my app.js section. I'm going to create another section for my app libraries, right? So I'm going to say our app library. Call it whatever you want. I'm going to put in here my label.ts. So that connects it to my index.html file, which makes it accessible to my app.js file. But in order for me to have code hinting for my objects, I need to pass in a reference to it at the top of my file. So I'm going to pass in my label.ts file inside there. And now I have access to my code hinting for my label, almost like having a type definition library, right? Because it's a local file that I'm controlling, I'm passing it in as an object. Are you with me? Yes?
So when this gets really big and you have all these references at the top, you separate that out into like a separate file? that
Yes.
you include?
Yeah, and you can reference that file.
Reference the references.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. But usually it's not necessary, right? Because, I mean, you know, usually but you're right, I guess there'll be a lot of references. It depends on how many you have. You can also cut them down by creating the references you need within the references that you're looking for, right? So, for example, maybe you don't need all the references that come into the main file, but only referenced into the modules that you need them, right? So then you don't need to share those references, is what I'm saying. Now I'm sharing the references across the entire application, right? Okay, so let's save this thing and see if I can access it. Right now, I have my hello label, but see up here, my hello label is of type createjs.text. Won't be that anymore. I'm going to make it my own type that I just created. So I'll say my hello label then is of type objects. Here it is, objects.label. That's my new type, right? Which means, but because my objects.label is a label, it still accepts certain things. I don't need to do this anymore, this new createjs.text. I need to do new objects.label. Oops.
Is objects the module?
Yeah, the module that I created, right? I'll show you that in a second. So here's my hello world, and here's my 80 pixel consolus, right? And here's my color, and here's my x and y coordinates, which is 320 by 240, right? That's the stuff that it's looking for. And I can get rid of all this, right? Because that's part of my class. So here's the module, look. My label.ts, this is the module, module objects. Objects is my namespace. Let me just show you what it looks like on the JavaScript side, because you're looking, okay, this is cool on the TypeScript side. What is it generating? So here's my label.js file. This is what it's generating, right? Like all this. And if you notice, it's generating a lot of syntax that, to be for the most part, looks like spaghetti for most people, right? We can understand this if we go through it very step by step. It's not understandable. It's just cumbersome for some. But if you notice, it is doing an anonymous inner closure, right? That is also declaring objects basically as a namespace. So that's what the JavaScript looks like. This is what the TypeScript looks like, which is beautiful, right? Compared to JavaScript. This to me is beautiful code when I see this kind of stuff, right? Nice and easy, very straightforward, and just as effective as a JavaScript.
Suddenly I'm looking, when I remember looking back to source files, I'm like, that was TypeScript.
Hmm?
Now I'm looking back at the source code that I looked over before, and I'm like, I was writing TypeScript. You can just tell by the
Yeah, you can tell, right? The way it's written. Okay, so now that this is written, let's use it. Let's test it first of all, see if it works, and let's see what the problems are, right? So we're going to write this thing, run this thing now. Now there's a problem. I already know what the problem is going to be. Well, first of all, let me refresh. I always like to refresh the page. Actually, it worked out perfectly. Let's take a look and see what we're getting on the from a JavaScript perspective. Here's my JavaScript console, and we're not getting any errors on the JavaScript side whatsoever, and it's running this nicely. Okay, now that we've added one object, we can add as many as we want. Here's my hello label. Let's add in a couple more labels, right? Let's add a goodbye label. Objects.label. And let's type in a label that says let's eat. Let's eat label. Right? Come on. Something else. Or maybe we need coffee label. How about that? So I'm almost ready for coffee myself. If it's still alive. Is it still going? All right. Let's do it. So now I can simply do one of these. Right? I can do copy. And let's do a couple of pastes here. Right? And inside my hello label, instead of that, it's going to be my goodbye label. If you notice, I'm getting code hinting, right? And I can just simply copy this into here. So that I'm adding that to stage. And this one would be obviously my let's eat label, right? Here, it's time to eat or whatever. Here's my let's eat label that I'm getting code hinting for, right? And now, instead of hello world, I'm going to say goodbye. Let's just make it interesting and change the pixel size to 30 with maybe let's make this red. And we won't put it at 320 by 240. We'll put it a little bit higher up. So we'll say it's at 120 by 240 in the middle. It'll still spin later on. And this one will be down at the bottom. And we'll make this so that it is, well, let's say 40. Make this blue. So Sure, cornflower. And we'll put this at the bottom, let's say around 420. So it's going to go off screen a little bit. All right. And let's eat labels here. Let's eat labels here. Let's update my labels with the same kind of rotation. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to label everything a little bit differently. So here's my hello label. Here's my goodbye label with a rotation of minus equals 1. And here's my let's eat label, or time to eat label. Here it is. Let's eat label with a rotation of plus equals to 10. And you know what? Let's also do one thing as well. Let's also make my let's eat label, actually my my hello label. That's the one at the top, or my goodbye label. My goodbye label with the x coordinate, or the y coordinate, sorry, plus equals to 1. So we're going to actually change the coordinate of the y every frame. Let's see how that works out, and see what we're going to do. Same object, and a bunch of things that are going on forever and ever. What? Yeah. And you see that the other one just disappeared because the y kept increasing until infinity, right? It'll keep going, right? The point is you have lots and lots of control. So think about the new websites that are out there right now. By the way, this is fully HTML5 compatible. It will run on smaller screens, but you have to, as you can see, it's going to be off screen because the canvas is the canvas. If you want to detect smaller screens, you'd have to detect the canvas size and then rejig your stuff to fit on the new canvas. It's not responsive. You got to create all that, your own responsive framework on your own. That's just the way it works. There is no CSS. There is no HTML. This is pure JavaScript, right? And it's redrawing the canvas over and over again.
Note on the CreateJS website, there is a responsive code.
There is. They've got a really interesting template to add responsiveness to your code. Any questions around this stuff? TypeScript. Now you might say, okay, Tom, that's great. I made labels spin around, but how does this help me from a node perspective or whatever? Well, that's the next stage. Step 2, let's go get a coffee or whatever. And step 2, I'll show you how to adapt this to real-world applications. All right?
How many years have you spent working on command line? You know, if you got something graphing